The night was cold and the city streets were almost empty. The neon lights flickered above broken shops, casting a strange glow over the cracked sidewalks. Jace, a thin teenage boy with messy hair and torn clothes, walked slowly with his hands in his pockets. He was homeless, hungry, and tired, but he had learned how to survive. He knew where to find half-eaten bread behind bakeries, where to hide when the city guards came, and how to sleep without freezing. Yet that night felt different. The silence carried something unusual, as if the shadows themselves were watching. He was about to turn toward his usual sleeping corner when he heard it. A faint sound, like a weak cry. At first, Jace thought it was just a cat or maybe his imagination. But then it came again, softer this time, like the broken whisper of someone in pain. His steps slowed. He had lived long enough on the streets to know that sounds in dark alleys often meant trouble. Still, curiosity tugged at him, and against his better judgment he followed the sound. At the end of a narrow alley, hidden between garbage bins, he saw her. A girl lay collapsed on the ground. She looked young, maybe his age, but her appearance was strange. Her skin was pale, almost silver under the neon light, and her hair was a shade of deep violet that shimmered faintly. Her eyes were half open, cloudy and unfocused, and Jace realized with a shock that she was blind. She tried to move, but her body trembled too much, and she let out another weak cry. For a moment, Jace froze. He had seen aliens before in this city, merchants, guards, travelers, but never one like this, and never one so helpless. He wanted to turn away. Helping her would mean trouble. He barely had enough strength to survive himself, but something inside him refused to leave. Maybe it was her voice, soft and desperate, or maybe it was the way she reached out blindly into the empty air, as if begging someone to notice her. Jace stepped closer. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked in a low voice. The girl flinched and turned her head toward his direction. Her lips moved slowly. "Are you human?" she whispered, her voice broken and weak. Jace hesitated. "Yeah, I'm human. Who are you?" She tried to answer but coughed instead. Her hands searched the ground blindly until they brushed against his boot. Jace looked down at her trembling fingers, dirty and cold, and sighed. He knew then he couldn't just walk away. He bent down and gently touched her shoulder. "Don't be scared," he said, trying to sound calm though his heart was racing. "I'll help you." The girl's cloudy eyes filled with tears. "Please, I need a healer," she whispered. "I can't." "Make it alone." Jace looked around nervously. He knew a healer who lived far across the city, but getting there wasn't easy. The streets were dangerous at night, especially for someone like him. Guards didn't like street kids, and gangs prowled the corners, always searching for easy victims. Carrying a blind alien girl would only draw more attention. Still, he couldn't ignore her plea. With a grunt, Jace slid his arms under her and carefully lifted her up. She was lighter than he expected, fragile like a bird, but he could feel her shivering against his chest. She clung to his torn jacket with surprising strength for someone so weak. As he stepped out of the alley, he felt the air shift. Somewhere in the distance, a vehicle slowed down, its lights scanning the streets. Jace's instincts screamed at him to move fast. He ducked into another alley, holding her close. The girl whispered again, her voice trembling. "They're looking for me." Jace stiffened. "Who's looking for you?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Her head rested against his shoulder, and she seemed to drift in and out of consciousness. Jace swallowed hard. He had no idea who she was or why someone would be after her, but he knew one thing. He was now part of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. The night felt heavier as he hurried through the streets. He could feel eyes watching from the dark corners, could hear distant footsteps echoing behind him. Every sound made his chest tighten. Yet he kept moving, carrying her through the maze of alleys. Finally, after what felt like forever, he stopped to catch his breath under a broken streetlight. The girl stirred slightly in his arms. "Why, help me?" she asked, her voice faint. Jace looked down at her, at the fragile alien girl who couldn't even see his face. He thought about all the times no one had helped him when he was hungry or cold. He didn't know why, but he couldn't let her suffer the same way. "Because no one else would," he answered simply. The girl gave a weak smile, though her cloudy eyes could not see him. "Thank you, human," she whispered before falling silent again. Jace adjusted his grip and started walking once more. He didn't know who she truly was or what danger followed them, but deep in his heart he knew this was only the beginning. Something far greater waited ahead, and his life would never be the same. The city felt heavier with every step Jace took. The alien girl in his arms was not only fragile, but she seemed to carry with her a strange silence, like the world itself was holding its breath. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder, her violet hair brushing against his cheek as he moved through the narrow alleys. Jace was used to walking alone, used to silence and darkness. But now the shadows seemed sharper, the air colder, and the night far more dangerous. He pulled his ragged jacket tighter around her, trying to shield her from the wind. His own stomach growled from hunger, but that didn't matter anymore. The weight of her was light, yet it pressed down on his soul like a mountain. Every now and then she stirred, her cloudy eyes moving though she could see nothing. Once she whispered something too softly for him to hear. "Don't talk," Jace muttered. "Save your strength." He didn't know where to take her at first. The healer was far, maybe too far, but it was the only chance she had. The old healer lived at the edge of the lower city, in a quiet street where gangs rarely bothered to go. But reaching him meant crossing several checkpoints and dangerous zones. Jace bit his lip, thinking. He had done risky things before to survive, stealing, running, hiding, but this felt different. If anyone saw her with him, questions would come and trouble would follow. As he turned a corner, the distant hum of an engine made his heart race. A black vehicle moved slowly along the main road, its lights scanning the empty streets. Jace quickly pressed himself against a wall, clutching the girl tighter. He held his breath, his body frozen until the vehicle passed. But the fear didn't leave him. Whoever they were, they weren't just patrolling, they were searching. Searching for her? "Who are you, really?" Jace whispered to her unconscious form. Of course, she didn't answer. He started moving again, faster now, weaving through back streets he knew well. He avoided the main roads, choosing the dirty, narrow paths only street kids like him used. His feet hurt, his back ached from carrying her, but he pushed forward. Somewhere inside, he felt a strange pull, like fate had pushed her into his arms and now refused to let him stop. After a long stretch, he found a spot to rest. An abandoned stairwell led down into a half-ruined basement. He carried her inside and laid her gently on a dusty blanket he found in the corner. For the first time, he could really look at her. Even with dirt and bruises, she looked different. Her skin, pale with a faint shimmer, seemed almost too delicate for this harsh world. Her lips were cracked and her breathing was shallow. Yet despite her weakness, there was something regal in her face, like she didn't belong on the dirty streets. Jace frowned. He knew she wasn't just some random alien girl. Suddenly, her hand reached out blindly and grabbed his wrist. "Don't leave me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jace stiffened but didn't pull away. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly. Her grip loosened and she lay back down, though her cloudy eyes still moved as if searching for something in the darkness. "You human?" she asked again, her tone desperate, almost afraid. "Yes," Jace said, softer this time. "I'm human." She seemed to relax, as if that answer alone gave her comfort. Jace sat back against the wall, watching her. Questions filled his mind. Why was she here? Why was she alone? Who was chasing her? And why did she seem so certain that someone was looking for her? The faint sound of footsteps outside broke his thoughts. Jace's body tensed. Slowly, he crawled to the broken window and peeked outside. 3 figures in dark coats walked down the street, moving with purpose. They weren't random drunks or thieves. These men looked like hunters. One of them carried a small scanner that beeped softly, flashing faint lights. Jace's heart pounded. They were tracking her. He ducked back inside, his breath sharp. He looked at the girl who had drifted into uneasy sleep. He couldn't stay here. If they searched the ruins, they'd find them. Carefully, he picked her up again, ignoring the ache in his arms. He pressed forward, slipping out through the back and into another alley. The footsteps grew distant, but Jace knew they were close. "Too close. Who are you really?" he whispered again, looking down at the sleeping girl. "What have I gotten myself into?" As he moved, the city seemed endless, a maze of danger and secrets. But in the middle of it all, Jace felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. For the first time since he was left homeless, he wasn't just surviving. He was protecting someone. And though he didn't know her name, though he didn't understand why people were hunting her, he made a silent promise in his heart. He wouldn't let them take her. Jace tightened his grip and pressed deeper into the shadows of the city, unaware that every step was pulling him closer to a truth that would change both their lives forever. The night stretched on endlessly, as Jace carried the blind alien girl through the twisting alleys. His arms ached, his legs trembled, but he refused to stop. The healer's home was still far away, hidden deep in the lower districts, and Jace knew he had to keep moving before those men in dark coats found them again. The girl's breathing was faint but steady. Every so often she would stir, her lips parting as if she wanted to speak, but no clear words came out. Jace tried not to think about how weak she seemed, but the thought pressed heavy on his mind. He couldn't let her die, not after he had already risked so much. The streets grew narrower as he pushed deeper into the maze of the city. Broken signs hung loosely above rusted doors, and the ground was wet from leaking pipes. The smell of oil and decay filled the air. Jace knew these paths well. He had spent years surviving in these forgotten corners, but now every shadow felt dangerous, every sound sharp and threatening. He kept his head down and moved quickly. Twice he saw patrols moving in the distance, men with scanners and strange weapons. They weren't city guards. They were something else, something scarier. Jace had seen guards before. They were lazy, greedy, and easily bribed. But these men looked like predators on the hunt, scanning every alley with sharp eyes. Jace tightened his grip on the girl. "Don't worry," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could hear. "I'll get you to the healer. Just hold on." Her fingers twitched against his jacket, and then she whispered faintly, "Why, help me?" Jace blinked at her. Her voice was soft, weak, but her question cut deep. Why was he helping her? He could have left her in that alley. He could have walked away and saved himself this danger. But instead, here he was, carrying a stranger across the city. "I don't know," Jace admitted. "Maybe because I know what it feels like to be left behind. No one helped me when I was alone, but I can't do that to you." Her cloudy eyes turned slightly toward his voice. She couldn't see him, but it felt like she was trying to. For a moment, a faint smile touched her lips before she drifted back into silence. Jace pushed on, his mind racing. Hours seemed to pass as he moved through the back streets. His legs felt heavy, but his determination grew stronger. He kept imagining the healer's face, an old man with kind eyes, one of the few people in the city who had ever shown Jace any kindness. If anyone could help her, it was him, but the path was not safe. At one point, Jace ducked into an abandoned market to avoid another search patrol. The place was dark and filled with broken stalls. He moved carefully, his ears alert for footsteps. Suddenly, the girl stirred again, her hand gripping his shirt. They will find me," she whispered. Jace froze. "Who will?" he asked quickly. Her lips trembled. "The ones who blinded me." Shock ran through Jace, his mind reeled. She wasn't born blind. Someone had done this to her. But who had hurt a girl like this, and why? He wanted to ask more, but her body went limp again, too weak to continue. Jace's chest tightened. Whoever these men were, they weren't just hunting her. They had already hurt her once, and they wanted her again. The thought filled him with a strange anger. He wasn't strong, he wasn't rich, he wasn't even respected, but he refused to hand her over to them. A sudden noise outside pulled him back to reality. Boots. Voices. The hunters were close. Jace held his breath as beams of light swept across the broken stalls. He crouched behind a wooden counter, holding the girl tight, his heart hammering in his chest. One of the hunter's scanners beeped faintly, and the man cursed. "She was here," he muttered. "The trail's fresh. Keep moving." The footsteps faded as the men continued down another street. Only then did Jace let out a slow breath. His whole body shook, but he forced himself to stand and keep going. There was no time to waste. By the time the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Jace finally saw the edge of the lower city. The buildings grew smaller, older, and quieter here. The healer's hut was still a long walk away, but for the first time that night, hope flickered in his chest. He looked down at the girl in his arms. She was still weak, but she was alive. "Almost there," he whispered. "Just a little longer." She stirred again, her lips parting. "My name, Lyra," she whispered faintly. Jace blinked. "Lyra?" he repeated softly, testing the sound of it. "All right, Lyra, my name's Jace, and I promise I won't let anything happen to you." Her cloudy eyes closed, and she seemed to rest more peacefully at last. Jace adjusted his grip and kept walking, unaware that even as the first rays of morning broke over the city, shadows still followed close behind. This journey was only beginning. The first rays of dawn painted the city in a dull gray. Jace's tired legs dragged forward, but his determination stayed sharp. The blind alien girl, Lyra, rested lightly in his arms, her head against his chest, her breathing shallow. For a brief moment, he let himself believe they were safe. But the streets of the lower city held secrets, and safety was never more than an illusion. Jace ducked into a narrow passage between two crumbling buildings, using shortcuts only street rats like him knew. His body ached from carrying Lyra all night, but he refused to stop. The healer's hut wasn't far now, just a few more turns, just a few more steps. Yet deep down he felt a tension that wouldn't leave. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was the sense of being hunted. As he walked, Lyra stirred. Her fingers gripped his jacket, weak but deliberate. "Jace," she whispered, her cloudy eyes moving though they saw nothing. He slowed, surprised that she remembered his name. "Yeah, I'm here." Her lips trembled. "Why do you risk yourself? You don't even know me." Jace shifted her weight, glancing around before answering. "I don't need to know you. I just know what it's like to be alone. No one helped me when I was starving, when I was cold. Maybe I don't want you to feel the same." A faint smile touched her lips. Kindness is rare, especially here. Her words struck him harder than he expected. For a moment, he saw himself in her. The same loneliness, the same silence of being forgotten. But there was more to her, something she wasn't saying. They stopped near an old fountain, its stone cracked and water long gone. Jace set her down carefully to rest while he caught his breath. Lyra leaned against the broken edge, her hands feeling the rough stone as if mapping her world through touch. "You've lived here long?" she asked softly. "Yeah," Jace said, sitting beside her. "The streets are home. Ugly, but it's all I've got." Her head tilted toward him. "You speak like someone used to pain, yet you protect me without question. That makes you different." Jace looked away, uncomfortable with her words. Maybe, or maybe I'm just stupid. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the distant call of a scavenger bird. Then Lyra's voice turned sharp, serious. "Jace, those men who hunt me? They're not ordinary. They blinded me to keep me weak. They won't stop until they have me again." Jace felt his stomach twist. "Why? What do they want with you?" She hesitated, her lips pressing together. Finally, she whispered, "Because of who I am." Jace leaned forward. "Then tell me, who are you, Lyra?" Her cloudy eyes filled with pain. "I am not just any alien girl. My father, he leads one of the most powerful families in this city, a family feared by many. The Hunters. They know if they control me, they can control him. That is why I was blinded, why I was taken. They thought my weakness would make me useless. But they were wrong." The words struck Jace like thunder. His eyes widened. "A mob boss's daughter." It explained everything, the Hunters, the fear, the danger. He suddenly felt smaller, like a tiny insect caught in the middle of giants. He wanted to run, to drop her and disappear back into the shadows where no one could find him. But when he looked at her trembling hands and heard the weakness in her voice, his heart refused. "Then they'll have to go through me first," Jace said, his voice firmer than he expected. Lyra turned her head, a faint trace of shock in her expression. "You don't understand. If they discover you helped me, they'll kill you. Or worse, maybe," Jace admitted. "But I've got nothing to lose. And if I leave you, I'll never forgive myself." Lyra was silent for a long moment, then whispered, "You are strange for a human." Before Jace could reply, a noise shattered the quiet. The crunch of boots on gravel. Voices low and sharp. Jace's blood froze. "The Hunters." He grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to move." Her cloudy eyes widened with panic. "I can't see." "Then trust me," Jace whispered fiercely. He pulled her up and guided her into the ruins, weaving through collapsed walls and broken doors. The Hunters' voices grew closer, echoing like knives in the still air. Jace pressed Lyra against a wall, shielding her with his body. He peeked through a crack and saw them. 3 dark-coated figures, their scanners glowing faintly. One of them cursed. "The signal's stronger here." "She's close." Jace's pulse hammered in his ears. He couldn't fight them. He couldn't outrun them with Lyra in her state. His only chance was to outsmart them. He took her hand again and whispered, "Stay quiet. Follow my steps." Together they moved deeper into the ruins, their breaths shallow, hearts racing. Every creak of stone, every rustle of fabric felt too loud. At one point, Jace's foot slipped and a piece of rubble clattered across the ground. The Hunters froze, their heads snapping toward the sound. "Over there," one shouted. Jace gritted his teeth and pulled Lyra into a narrow gap between fallen beams. They crouched low, hidden by shadows as the hunter's light swept past. For what felt like an eternity, the men searched. Then slowly their voices faded and their footsteps grew distant. Jace let out a shaky breath, his body trembling with relief. Lyra's hand tightened around his. "You risked yourself again," she whispered. Jace managed a small, tired smile. "Guess I'm getting used to it." Her cloudy eyes turned toward his voice. "If we survive this, I will tell you everything. You deserve to know." Jace nodded, though deep inside he wondered if he truly wanted to know. Secrets this big didn't just change lives, they destroyed them. Still, as he pulled her close and guided her back onto the path toward the healer, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever danger lay ahead, he would face it with her. The darkness around them felt alive, hiding threats, hiding truths. But Jace had already stepped too far into this secret. There was no turning back. The sun had finally broken the horizon when Jace reached the edge of the district where the old healer lived. His legs felt like lead. His back screamed with pain from carrying Lyra for so long, but he didn't dare stop. The narrow lanes were quieter here, far from the main market noise and the endless patrols. Old stone houses leaned against each other, their windows shuttered, their doors marked with faded signs of forgotten trades. Jace pushed forward until he stood before a crooked wooden door tucked beneath a sagging roof. The paint had peeled away long ago and the air smelled faintly of herbs. He knocked quickly, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. A moment later, the door creaked open, and a thin, bearded man with tired eyes appeared. He wore a patched robe, and his hands were stained with ink and powders from years of grinding medicine. His gaze fell immediately on Jace, and then on the limp alien girl in his arms. The man's eyes widened. "By the stars," he whispered. "Bring her inside, quickly." Jace hurried in. The healer closed the door behind them, sliding a heavy lock into place. The small room smelled strongly of dried herbs, smoke, and oils. Wooden shelves covered the walls, stacked with bottles, jars, and scrolls. A single lantern flickered on the table, casting warm light over the clutter. Jace laid Lyra gently on a narrow cot. The healer knelt beside her, his long fingers carefully touching her face, her pulse, her cloudy eyes. His expression tightened, and he muttered words Jace couldn't understand. "Will she be okay?" Jace asked, his voice low but urgent. The healer didn't answer immediately. He opened a jar and sprinkled powder over Lyra's eyes, then waved a smoking stick above her chest. Finally, he sighed deeply and looked at Jace. "She is alive, but she has been poisoned. A slow venom designed to damage her sight and weaken her body. Whoever did this wanted her helpless." Jace clenched his fists. "Can you fix it?" The healer's eyes flicked back to Lyra and his voice dropped. "Perhaps. But Jace, do you have any idea who she is?" Jace hesitated. He remembered Lyra's broken confession in the ruins. He swallowed. "She said, she's the daughter of someone powerful." The healer's eyes darkened. He leaned close, his whisper sharp. "She is more than that. She is Lyra Valen, the only daughter of Drael Valen, the most feared mob lord in this sector. His family controls half the black markets, the shipping docks, even the city guards. People disappear if they cross him. And you, boy, you've carried his daughter into my home." Jace's heart slammed in his chest. He stumbled back a step. "You're joking." "I wish I were." The healer's face was grim. "The entire city is searching for her. Some wish to return her to her father. Others want her dead to weaken his empire. And you," he pointed at Jace with a trembling finger. "If they learn you touched her, carried her, protected her, they will tear you apart." Jace felt his breath falter. He looked at Lyra lying weakly on the cot, her blind eyes fluttering as she whispered his name. "Jace." The sound of her fragile voice struck him harder than the healer's warning. He couldn't walk away now, not after everything. "I don't care who she is," Jace said firmly. "She needed me, and I'm not leaving her." The healer studied him for a long moment, then gave a faint, bitter smile. "You sound like a fool, but sometimes fools have the strongest hearts." He turned back to Lyra, preparing more herbs. "I can slow the venom, maybe even heal her blindness. But it will take time. Time you may not have." As if to prove his point, a heavy knock thundered on the door. Both Jace and the healer froze. "Open up!" a voice barked from outside. "Search order." The healer's eyes widened. He shoved a small pouch into Jace's hands. "Take her." "Out the back, now!" Jace's pulse raced. "What about you?" "I will stall them," the healer whispered quickly. Go, Jace didn't argue. He scooped Lyra back into his arms, her body warm but trembling. She clutched weakly at his shirt. Jace? She murmured. Shh, he whispered. I've got you. The healer lifted a floorboard, revealing a narrow passage leading into the back alley. Jace climbed down, heart pounding, and the board slid back into place above him. As he slipped into the dark passage, he heard the front door crash open, boots stomping inside, and the healer's calm voice greeting the intruders. Jace gritted his teeth. He knew the old man was risking everything. Carrying Lyra once more, he stepped into the cold alley, the morning light sharp against the crumbling walls. He glanced down at her pale face. You're more trouble than I ever imagined, he muttered, though his arms tightened protectively around her. Her lips moved faintly. Sorry. Jace shook his head. Don't be. Just stay alive. He looked at the pouch the healer had given him. Inside were strange herbs, powders, and a small vial that glowed faintly blue. He didn't know what they were, but he trusted the healer enough to know they were important. As he hurried down the alley, the sound of shouts and crashing furniture echoed from the healer's hut. The hunters were inside now. Jace knew they would discover soon enough that the girl wasn't there. And when they did, the chase would begin again. But this time he wasn't just carrying a blind alien girl. He was carrying the secret heir to one of the most feared families in the galaxy, and if he wanted to survive, he would have to face enemies far more dangerous than the streets he'd grown up on. The healer's final words echoed in his mind. Time you may not have. The alley was narrow and damp, filled with the smell of rotting food and leaking pipes. Jace's boots splashed through puddles as he carried Lyra close to his chest. Behind him, the healer's hut rattled with noise, boots stomping, voices shouting, wood crashing. The hunters had broken inside. Jace didn't dare look back. His heart pounded as he hurried down the twisting path. Every corner felt like a trap, every shadow like a waiting enemy. Lyra's faint breathing brushed against his neck, and her hands clung weakly to his torn jacket. They're close, she whispered, her voice trembling. I know, Jace muttered, but I won't let them take you. He tightened his grip and pressed on. The city was waking now. The morning markets were opening, stalls rolling out goods, vendors shouting prices. The normal citizens of the lower district moved about their lives, unaware of the hunt unfolding among them. Jace slipped into the crowd, hoping to vanish among the noise and color, but it wasn't enough. Across the square, he saw them. Dark-coated hunters, their scanners glowing faintly in their hands. They moved with cold precision, scanning faces, scanning the air. Searching. Jace pulled Lyra's hood up over her violet hair and turned quickly, guiding her through the thick crowd. He ducked between stalls of fruit and bolts of cloth, weaving so fast that vendors shouted at him for nearly toppling their goods. Jace, Lyra whispered, clutching tighter. They will find us. They always do. Not if I move faster, he said through clenched teeth. But even as he said it, the sharp buzz of a scanner pierced the market air. One of the hunters looked up, his eyes narrowing. He shouted to the others, There! Jace's blood turned to ice. He broke into a run. Shouts filled the market as he shoved through the crowd, knocking over baskets and pushing past startled citizens. Behind him, the heavy boots of the hunters thundered closer. Lyra held on desperately, her cloudy eyes wide, though she couldn't see. Jace, hold tight! He shouted. He darted into a side alley, his chest burning with the effort. The narrow path twisted sharply, but he knew these streets better than anyone. He slid between two broken walls, climbed a pile of crates, and leapt over a low fence. The hunters followed, but their heavy gear slowed them. Jace reached a collapsed stairwell and crouched low behind the rubble, catching his breath. He listened. The hunters' boots echoed closer, then paused. One of them growled. The signal's strong. She's here. Jace's pulse hammered in his ears. He glanced down at Lyra, who was trembling against him. He whispered, I need you to trust me. I already do. She whispered back. Something inside Jace hardened at her words. He shifted her weight on his back and slipped through another hidden gap in the wall. He moved like smoke, vanishing into the ruins, using every hidden corner he had learned during years of survival. But the hunters were relentless. He could hear their voices echoing. The boss wants her alive, don't lose them. Jace's mind spun. The boss. Did they mean Lyra's father or her father's enemies? He didn't know. And right now it didn't matter. All he knew was that they wouldn't stop. Finally, after weaving through a maze of alleys, Jace burst out onto an old railway yard. Rusted tracks crisscrossed the ground, and broken cargo containers stood like giant tombs. He ducked into one of the containers, laying Lyra gently on the floor. She was pale, her breath shallow. "Rest here for a moment," he whispered. Her hand caught his. "Don't leave me, Jace, promise." "I won't," he said firmly, "but I need to look outside." He peered through a crack in the container. The hunters had entered the yard, their scanners glowing brighter now. They were spreading out, checking each container one by one. Jace's stomach dropped. They were closing in. Lyra's voice trembled behind him. "They are like wolves. They don't stop until they taste blood." Jace clenched his fists. He wasn't a fighter. He had no weapons, no power. He was just a homeless boy. But for the first time, he felt a fire inside him stronger than fear. He wasn't just running anymore. He was protecting her. The hunters drew nearer. Jace pressed his back against the container wall, his breath sharp. The pouch the healer had given him slipped from his pocket. He opened it quickly, desperate for something useful. Inside, among herbs and powders, was a small vial that glowed faintly blue. He stared at it. What was it? Medicine? A weapon? The hunters' voices grew louder. "Check that one." Jace had seconds to decide. He held the vial tightly, glancing at Lyra. Her blind eyes turned toward him, trusting, waiting. The container door screeched as it began to open. Jace's jaw tightened. "If they want you," he whispered, "they'll have to go through me." As the door cracked open and a hunter's shadow fell across them, Jace raised the glowing vial, ready to fight with whatever he had. The hunt was no longer just about survival. It was war. The rusty container door screeched open, spilling light into the shadows where Jace and Lyra hid. A dark-coated hunter stepped inside, his weapon raised, his eyes narrowing as he spotted them. "Found you," he growled. Jace's grip tightened on the glowing vial. His heart thundered in his chest. He had no plan, no weapon except this strange liquid the healer had given him. But he had something else. Desperation. He hurled the vial hard at the ground between himself and the hunter. The glass shattered, and a burst of blue mist exploded into the air. It swirled around the hunter like a living fog. The man coughed, stumbled, and dropped his weapon, clawing at his throat. His body convulsed, and within moments he collapsed to the floor, unmoving. Jace froze in shock. The vial wasn't medicine. It was poison, or something far stranger. The glowing mist still hovered faintly, shimmering like starlight before fading away. What was that? Jace whispered to himself. Lyra's cloudy eyes flickered open. Her lips parted weakly. It was meant to protect me. The healer knew. Before Jace could respond, shouts echoed from outside. More hunters were closing in. He grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her up. "We have to move, now!" They ran out of the container and into the maze of the railway yard. Jace's lungs burned, but he pushed forward, weaving between rusted cargo and broken tracks. Behind them, the hunters spread out, their scanners glowing brighter, their shouts carrying like thunder. "Don't let them escape." Lyra stumbled, but Jace caught her. She clung to him, trusting him to be her eyes. He led her into another row of containers, ducking into the shadows. But this time, there was no escape. 3 hunters appeared, blocking the path ahead. Jace's chest tightened. They were trapped. The hunters raised their weapons, their faces cold and merciless. One of them sneered. "Hand her over, boy. Do that, and maybe we'll let you crawl away." Jace stood firm, shielding Lyra with his body. His voice shook, but his words were steady. "I'm not giving her to you." The hunter laughed. "You think you matter? You're just a street rat. She belongs to powers far beyond you. She's nothing but a tool in a war you can't even understand." Lyra lifted her head at his words. Though blind, her expression hardened. "I am not your tool," she said, her weak voice carrying surprising strength. The hunters smirked, ready to advance. But before they could, a new sound filled the yard. the deep, rumbling engines of black armored vehicles. They surrounded the railway yard, their doors sliding open. Dozens of armed figures poured out, but these weren't hunters. They wore the insignia of the Valen family, the crest of Lyra's father. The hunter's confidence faltered. One of them cursed. "We're too late." From the largest vehicle, a tall figure stepped out. His presence was enough to silence the chaos. He wore a dark coat lined with gold, his face sharp and commanding, his eyes cold as steel. Even from a distance, Jace felt the weight of his power. This had to be him, Drael Valen, the mob boss himself. The hunters panicked, trying to retreat, but the Valen soldiers moved swiftly, surrounding them. Within minutes, the hunters were disarmed, forced to their knees. Jace stood frozen, still holding Lyra close. His heart raced as the mob boss strode toward them. "Father," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. The man's hard expression softened slightly as he looked at her. "Lyra." He knelt beside her, his gloved hand brushing her violet hair gently. For a moment, the ruthless mob lord looked only like a grieving father. "They told me you were gone." Tears slipped from Lyra's blind eyes. "I thought I would never see you again." Drael's gaze shifted to Jace. His eyes narrowed, studying the ragged teen who had carried his daughter across the city. "You," he said, his voice low but dangerous. "You saved her?" Jace swallowed hard, his body tense. I just found her. I couldn't leave her." The mob boss stared at him for a long, heavy moment. Then, unexpectedly, he gave a slow nod. "Most would have sold her, or abandoned her, but you carried her through the night." His voice dropped, dangerous but respectful. "That makes you different." Lyra clutched Jace's hand. "He protected me, father, when no one else would." Drael looked down at their joined hands. His cold eyes softened again, just slightly. He turned to his soldiers. "Take my daughter, heal her at once, and make sure this boy is given protection." The soldiers moved swiftly, lifting Lyra gently onto a stretcher. She reached out blindly until her hand found Jace's one last time. "Don't leave me," she whispered. "I won't," Jace promised. As the soldiers carried her toward the vehicle, Drael lingered. He stepped close to Jace, his towering frame casting a long shadow. "You've earned her trust. That is not something my enemies or even my allies ever gain. Remember this, boy. Saving my daughter means you are part of my world now, and my world is not kind." Jace's chest tightened, but he met the mob boss's gaze. "I don't care how dangerous your world is, I'll keep protecting her." For the first time, Drael gave the faintest hint of a smile. "Then perhaps, you are exactly what she needs." The engines roared as the convoy prepared to leave. Jace stood there, his clothes torn, his body aching, his heart still racing. He had begun the night as a homeless street rat with nothing. Now he was bound to the daughter of the most feared man in the sector, caught in a web of power and danger he could barely understand. But as he looked at Lyra one last time before the doors closed, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. His life would never be the same. And though the city still held its shadows, Jace felt for the first time that he had a place in it, not as a beggar, not as a forgotten teen, but as the protector of someone who trusted him completely. The truth had been revealed, and it was only the beginning.